The University of Chicago is getting some praise and some backlash over a blunt welcome letter to its incoming freshman class. While political correctness is all the rage on college campuses, this letter from the Dean of Students reads in part, quote, "Our commitment to academic freedom means we do not support so-called trigger warnings. We do not cancel invited speakers because their topics might prove controversial, and we do not condone the creation of intellectual safe spaces where individuals can retreat from ideas and perspectives at odds with their own." All right, here's our legal panel. David Bruno, a criminal defense attorney, a former prosecutor and a trial attorney, and Robert Schalk, a defense attorney and former prosecutor. Welcome to you both.
Good afternoon.
Thanks. All right, so President Obama told students at Howard University there's been a trend around the country of trying to get colleges to disinvite speakers with a different point of view or disrupt a politician's rally. Don't do that, no matter how ridiculous or offensive you might find the things that come out of their mouths. David, isn't Dean Ellison pretty much saying the same thing?
I thought, well, he does, in essence, but in a one-page letter. And personally, I think it's very reckless. This comes down to very complex First Amendment speech and how it's applied to universities. And what they tried to do in this letter is basically summarize it in one page, saying that we welcome all speech. And that's not consistent with our federal and state laws.
I'll just let you respond,
I
Robert.
disagree in the sense that this wasn't a very reasoned approach that the university took. They had one of their law professors, Jeffrey Stone, who led a panel that was feedback from students, feedback from faculty as to how we wanted to approach lectures and speech on campus. And this is what they came up with, and I respect the way it was handled. Two of the things that we obviously want to do when we send children to college is encourage them to learn, encourage them to accept the differences with one another, and to understand the Constitution and their constitutional rights to free speech, and that their free speech is something that they can say, and if they don't like what somebody else says, they can either debate it or walk away from it. But I thought it was a very well-reasoned letter and the way that they went about it.
David, to Robert's point, as he says, the University of Chicago put together this whole panel, studied the issue, put out a report, and concluded it is not the proper role of a university to shield individuals from ideas they find unwelcome. And this was after doing this whole study of the issue. And after they put that out, other universities enacted similar policies. Princeton, Columbia, Purdue, etc. They say based on what the University of Chicago did.
I don't disagree with the message itself. I disagree the way that they went about it. They put it in a one-page letter. This is more relevant to maybe an orientation or a class for freshmen, because there's some very, very concerning language in here. Let's just think, if you're in the LGBT community and you get a letter that says there is no safe spaces where individuals can retreat from ideas and perspectives at odds with their own, that is scary language. It's problematic. I just think there needs to be some explanation behind it.
You know, what's interesting is that, in fact, the University of Chicago has a safe space for the LGBT community, and also they clarified this letter after the fact, Robert, and said, and we do still allow our professors to do a trigger warning if they feel it's warranted. Is this inconsistent, or is this sort of reassuring that they're not planning on going crazy with this? They're just letting you know they don't want to take it too far the other way.
Right. I think we're not going to get too crazy with this. I think it's going to be left up to each individual professor to determine whether or not they're going to say, listen, if you have an issue with this, obviously here's what the topic's going to be, and lay it out for them. But they're not going to turn speakers away because it may offend a few. They're going to allow students to potentially walk away from the situation and create these safe spaces. But the university as a whole is not going to be making the announcements. They're going to leave it up to the individual professors, and that's what the professors said during the intern review as to how we think we should handle this.
David, we keep hearing, from critics of this PC culture that, these kids are being coddled. They're eventually going to get out into the real world. People are going to say things. They're not going to be able to run into the bathroom and hide. What about that whole coddle millennial thing?
Well, it comes down to First Amendment jurisprudence. I mean, really, there are there are cases that have to be interpreted through the courts. And it is an issue. It's a hot issue. And when we see a letter come through like this, I really have to question the motivation. Why? I mean, this is a hot issue, but it's also a political one. And these presidents and the deans are out there to get donations, and I just have to question why this was done.
Well, and that is what some people are saying, is that a lot of parents are against these safe spaces and whatnot, and that this was really more a letter to the donors than to the kids to say, hey, keep supporting our school. You think that's part of this? Is there a political motivation here?
There could be, but again, I think the most important thing is they're telling students now and students for the future that if this is a place where you want to be and you want to be a free thinker and you want to be able to engage in debate and you want to be able to challenge yourself and challenge your fellow classmates to have open discussion, open dialogue, then this is the university for you. They're just putting it out there that this is who we're about. And I think that's a good message to send.
Got to go. Robert Schalk, David Bruno, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you, Pat.
Eric?
All right, thank you, Patty.